We have given Abraham's family the scripture and wisdom, and we granted them a great authority. Some of them believed therein, and some of them repelled therefrom. Hell is the only just retribution for these. So in those verses, again, those who exalt themselves, you know, we can't remember the verse, but there's another verse that talks about making sure you don't exalt yourself. Many verses, but you don't want to exalt yourself in this life. God is the one who placed people in the positions they are. It kind of, it's interesting. This week I was kind of studying libertarianism, economic policy, and that's one of that's the type of economic system that the messenger had pointed out that was most Quranic, which is extreme libertarianism. And that's where you have as few government regulations, impositions upon people, such so that they can freely choose God's domain or Satan's domain. And the thing about that is that in an economic system, you where God's economic system, he has placed some people wealthy, some people moderate, and some people poor. And in this system, you don't need to do anything to it. It just, the poor people need to work. So they're going to go to the people who have some money and say, can I dig your ditch for you? Can I build a fence for you? And the moderate people can say, hey, can I do your accounting? Can I work with your books, you know, or these kind of things? Or they can run a business for of a bunch of ditch diggers and small people. They're in the middle. It's just, God has created this distribution of people in all walks of life. And with that system, there's natural incentive for all parties. And within our nature, there's a nature of an element of greed. We want things, and God talks about it. We are that way, and it is part of this system of motivating people to do things, and whether they're believers or not. And also, God places some people with more responsibility than other people, and they are blessed with the capabilities of those responsibilities as well. So God is the one who exalts, puts people in whatever position they have. And we are supposed to evaluate where we're at, be thankful for it, and do the best we can and strive to get better from where we are without resentment. God is saying how it's a gross offense to fabricate lies, and they believe in idolatry and false doctrine, and some people think that the disbelievers are better guided than the believers, and we've heard that. We've all seen how religion has been made fun of. And seems backwards. Religion is backwards. And in many cases it is. It's just not, it's completely true. The religion has been given a bad name. And disbelievers all over the place are saying that the disbelievers are more guided than the believers. And I think that's because of just the distortions in a lot of the religions. But as we know, societies come to the truth. One of the examples is alcohol. And it's if you go back into the 50s in this country, and alcohol was, you know, it was very popular. Now, if you go back into the 30s, I think it was, or what was it, 20s, 30s, where they tried prohibition in this country. It failed because alcohol was so popular. They made alcohol illegal, but they couldn't do it. It was so popular. Now, right now, it's pretty popular too, but there is a groundswell, at least in the intellectual circles, not just in religious circles, but more in scientific and in sociological understandings, that alcohol does more damage to societies. We're spending so much money and effort to deal with the offsets of alcoholism. So that's just an aspect of how the disbelievers, they're better guided than the believers. But what's happening is people are recognizing that, oh, wait, the believers are onto something there, and that God promises that by the end, the Quran, the world will be Quranic. Not necessarily, you know, as time goes, it's not necessarily because they are believers, but the world will become Quranic because of the wisdom of it, that they come to it independent of the Quran, is what I think. It's there's going to, just as time goes on, the wisdom will be more and more clear to the masses. Okay. I'll move on. Allegorical description of hell. Surely those who disbelieve in our revelations, we will condemn them to the hellfire. Whenever their skins are burnt, we will give them new skins. Thus they will suffer continuously. God is almighty, most wise. I just want to talk on that one for a second. It's just, there's no way that we weren't warned that hell is not a place you don't want to be. Even if you think that you won't stay there forever, you read a verse like that and you don't want to be in there for a second. 457. As for those who believe and lead a righteous life, we will admit them into gardens with flowing streams. They abide therein forever. They will have pure spouses therein. We will admit them into a blissful shade. So look at, God goes from the bad of hell and he follows it up. But there's heaven there for you if you just obey. The next headline is Honesty and Justice Advocated. 458. God commands you to give back anything the people have entrusted to you. If you judge among the people, you shall judge equitably. The best enlightenment, indeed, is what God recommends for you. God is the hearer and the seer. And there's verses in the Quran that talk about when you judge, even if it's against yourself, there's no nepotism, no judging better for your friends, your family. No, you're fair even against yourself, against your families. It's about truth. 459. O you who believe, you shall obey God and you shall obey the messenger and those in charge among you. If you dispute any matter, you shall refer it to God and the messenger. If you do believe in God in the last day, this is better for you and provides you with the best solution. So you shall refer it to God and the messenger. So refer it to God. You know, I was imagining that, how God can just inspire you to do something. Like in your prayer, you could say, God, I am so lost in this certain area. And you could be praying to him and saying, please guide me in this certain area. Please guide me in this certain area. And you could be guided. He could let you know something. That's one way. But the other way is the Quran. That's how we go to the Quran and we have questions and we're patient. We read the Quran from cover to cover and we examine the verses, and we have patience that God will answer us in this matter. And also, we have to trust the messengers that God sends. The Quran is a messenger, and messengers are messengers, and messengers explain revelation. And we're so blessed that we have explanations recorded and in writings and on tapes for us to go to some matters that, you know, are kind of, they're hard to understand. We can get understandings from the messenger, and that's what God is saying, is that when you do, you that you shall refer it to God in the message. So if you disputed any matter, you try to see what are the rulings on this matter. We just don't go to our own opinions. We go to the source, and we work from the source and see what it says, and see if there's been any explanations by a messenger and by our messenger, and that's where we go from. It says this is better for you and provides you with the best solution. So that's the best solution. There's not a better way. It's clear. Believers are hypocrites. 460. Have you noted those who claim that they believe in what was revealed to you and in what was revealed before you, then uphold the unjust laws of their idols? They were commanded to reject such laws. Indeed, it is the devil's wish to lead them far astray. When they are told, come to what God has revealed, and to the messenger, you see the hypocrites shunning you completely. How will it be when a disaster hits them as a consequence of their own works? They will come to you then and swear by God, our intentions were good and righteous. God is fully aware of their innermost intentions. You shall ignore them, enlighten them, and give them good advice that may save their souls. You know, I can't help but ignore it. I can see that how this kind of ties in with the circumcision debate, in that, you know, there's been a lot of energy put into trying to enlighten these people, into giving them good advice, and it's been about for saving their souls. And they claim they believe in the Quran, that it's fully that it's complete and fully detailed, but they uphold the unjust laws of their idols. And so in this case, it's an opinion or of somebody in the community, or it's the Bible as a source, or it's the Hadith, or it's just that's what their parents did. That's holding another source, which it's a form of idolatry. And it says, how will it be when a disaster hits them as a consequence of their own works? They will come to you then and swear by God, our intentions were good and righteous. Well, we can only hope that that they are so lucky to have such an opportunity. So, God willing, we're all guided to find the truth, and to be guided to submission that was given to us from God. Next headline: unquestioning submission, quality of the true believers. 464. We did not send any messenger except to be obeyed in accordance with God's will. Had they, when they wronged their souls, come to you and prayed to God for forgiveness, and the messenger prayed for their forgiveness, they would have found God Redeemer, most merciful. 465. Never, indeed, by your Lord. They are not believers unless they come to you to judge in their disputes, then find no hesitation in their hearts whatsoever in accepting your judgment. They must submit a total submission. SubhanAllah. So we have a lot of judgments that have been slowly eroded from our understanding of submission. One of them is the notion that our lives have consequences, that God gives you signs, and that when bad things happen to you, you're supposed to learn about it. And there's a lot of people abusing that understanding, and we're supposed to, look to, like I said, this ties in with the other verse, that seeing how the messenger explained the Quran, seeing what God says in the Quran. Most of the Quran is just so straightforward, and but we have that additional example to see how, not example, but explanations to see how certain things were judged. And we're supposed to examine it and say, okay, whatever whatever I believe, it must be wrong. If I'm not seeing it the way that the Quran says it, and how we've been, how God has taught us, then you have to change yourself. That's a total submission. We must give up. Again, it ties in with what I was saying earlier. We must give up our idolatry. We must examine, see what the thinking is, and if you find yourself not agreeing, you're wrong. We have to untie our knots. Let's see. Next one. God's tests are never unreasonable. 466. Had we decreed for them, you must offer your lives or give up your homes, they would not have done it, except for a few of them. Even if such a command was issued, had they done what they were commanded to do, it would not have been better for them and would have proven, excuse me, let me read that again. I missed a word. 466. Had we decreed for them, you must offer your lives or give up your homes, they would not have done it, except for a few of them. Even if such a command was issued, had they done what they were commanded to do, it would have been better for them and would prove the strength of their faith. And we would have granted them a great recompense. And we would have guided them in the right path. How many times do I'm guilty of this, give up an opportunity to prove the strength of your faith? There's probably opportunities all the time that we have that would illustrate, put on our tape, on our permanent record, an act or a certain deed that would demonstrate the strength of our faith sincerely, not for others to see, to boost yourself necessarily. It's sincere. We need to, I'm telling myself this, I need to take advantage of those opportunities. Equality of the believers. 469. Those who obey God and the messenger belong with those blessed by God. The prophets, the saints, the martyrs, and the righteous. These are the best company. Such is the blessing from God. God is the best knower. O you who believe, you shall remain alert and mobilize as individuals or mobilize all together. Surely there are those among you who would drag their feet. Then, if a setback afflicts you, they would say, God has blessed me that I was not martyred with them. But if you attain a blessing from God, they would say, as if no friendship ever existed between you and them, I wish I was with them so I could share in such a great victory. So, and then those who readily fight in the cause of God are those who forsake this world in favor of the hereafter. Whoever fights in the cause of God then gets killed or attains victory, we will surely grant him a great recompense. So let me look at that. Equality of the believers. So, equality of the believers. I remember as a Sunni Muslim, there was this thing about the mujahideen, going off to war and becoming a martyr, dying. That's, you get to go to heaven if you go and you die in the cause of God. And this understanding was void of an understanding that righteous people, or in your if you were living an equally striving life in your setting without war, that you also could be martyr, could be amongst the martyrs, the saints. That's what God's saying here, is that if you're a believer, of course we have different ranks, but the high ranks, of course, it says here, blessed by God, those who obey God and the messenger belong with those blessed by God. Those who obey God and the messenger belong with those blessed by God. Who are they? That would be the prophets, the saints, the martyrs, and the righteous. So you don't have to go off to war and get killed to be among them. You can be one of the righteous. That's what God is saying. We can be one of the righteous. And God willing, we can be believers and righteous believers at that. Very the highest ranks. May God guide us to have the strength to do a total submission. That was back in verse 465. They must submit a total submission. I've pondered that one before in past Quran studies. Total submission. What is that? And obedience, obeying and doing. But also, I think if you understand that this life is a test and that it is so temporary and that every second counts as part of this test, if you truly understand that, and it's like the game has started and the buzzer just started. Now you're out there on the basketball court or whatever it is, the life court, the football field, the field of being a submitter. You're out there. The buzzer started and we're here. Now what do? Well, we're studying the rule book. Unfortunately, the game's already started and we're studying the rule book, so we need to, that's why God's saying, look, study the Quran, know the rules, know what you're here for, understand it, because the game clock is already going. And we want to take advantage of every opportunity, and I'll use this metaphor again, to score, to do deeds that help develop our soul. That's the point, to be able to withstand God's presence on the day of judgment, inshallah. So I'll stop there, God willing, and we can discuss. Alhamdulillah. Unless you want me to read some more.
You could read some more, yeah.
Yeah.
What was that? Is the answer? Is it a yes? Go ahead.
Yes.
You could read some more.
Oh, okay. Let's do it.
Yes,
all right.
yes.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Let me go back to the source, the only source. I'm going to go back into our only source. That would be our Quran. Let's see. Source. Let me look that up. So, definition of source. I'm looking up the definition of source by Merriam-Webster. So, our only source. Well, it's the point of origin, the fountainhead, like the spring. It's the point of origin, the beginning. It's the prototype, the model. So that's going back to the source here. So, okay. Oh, I gotta go. Okay, 475. Well, the headline is, "The believers are fearless." "475. Why should you not fight in the cause of God when weak men, women, and children are imploring, 'Our Lord, deliver us from this community whose people are oppressive, and be you our Lord and be you our Lord and Master.' Those who believe are fighting for God, are fighting for the cause of God. Those who believe are fighting for the cause of God, while those who disbelieve are fighting for the cause of tyranny. Therefore, you shall fight the devil's allies. The devil's power is nil. Have you noted those who were told, 'You do not have to fight. All you need to do is observe the contact prayers and give the obligatory charity?' Then, when fighting was decreed for them, they feared the people as much as they feared God, or even more. They said, 'Our Lord, why did you force this fighting on us? If only you respite us for a while. Say, the materials of this world are nil, while the hereafter is far better for the righteous, and you never suffer the slightest injustice.'" Well, okay. The believers are fearless. Is that me? No, that's not me. I have not gotten to that level. And God willing, I remember the messenger saying that when you get to that place, he says, enjoy. He says, you're in God's domain, enjoy. But as long as if we're not fearless, that means we are listening to the whispers of Satan. So let me read that verse for us real quick. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. In the name of God, most gracious, most merciful. I seek refuge in the Lord of the daybreak, from the evils among his creations, from the evils of the darkness as it falls, from the evils of the troublemakers, from the evils of the envious when they envy. And in the name of God, most gracious, most merciful, say, I seek refuge in the Lord of the people, the King of the people, the God of the people, from the evils of the sneaky whisperers who whisper into the chest of the people, be they of the jinns or of the people. So we want to be fearless. We don't want to listen to God's whispers. We want to be those who submit a total submission, and sometimes that means fighting. And that's what God's saying here. And we should know that. When we study the Quran, we should see, well, yeah, God may decree fighting for us. And we shouldn't look to get out of it. We should see that, oh, here's an opportunity for me to strive in the cause of God. And God's stressing here that it's not just contact prayers, obligatory charity, that we need to what was I saying before? We need to show that we have to show that we want it. We have to show that we understand. Oh, wait a second. This life is just an illusion. We are, it's a test. Understand that you're in that test. And fighting that's part of the rules of engagement of the game here. Now, I've been involved in disputes as far as what constitutes fighting. And I'm still not completely sure what and when would be considered fighting or not. But I'm not going to spout on that. It's just, I'm going to leave it as God puts it here, fighting. So different people understand that in different ways, and God willing, we're guided to exactly what the truth is. And let's see. I'll move on to the 478. God is the doer of everything. 478. Wherever you are, death will catch up. 478. Wherever you are, death will catch up with you. Even if you live in formidable castles. Formidable castles. When something good happens to them, they say, this is from God. And when something bad afflicts them, they blame you. Say, everything comes from God. Why do these people misunderstand almost everything? And the footnote says, bad things are consequences of our own deeds. Though God is the doer of everything, so bad things are consequence of our own deeds, though God is the doer of everything. God created the fire to serve us, but you can decide to put your finger into it. We thus hurt ourselves. It is God's law that if you put your finger into the fire, it will hurt. So that's a difficult concept to get a hold of, that God is doing everything, even the stuff that Satan is doing. But if you just step back and see that God has arranged Satan's tendencies and placed them as a test for the rest of the people. So see, God is the doer of everything, knows Satan's tendencies, what he's choosing, and he only puts the people, he orchestrates people to be engaged with Satan's problems or the tests that he is putting out. And it's perfectly orchestrated. Nothing is unjust. We always, no matter what in your mind, you always have to say, well, whatever it is, God is the most just. Whatever my understanding, no matter what, even if I'm suffering, I know it's the most fair thing. It's the right thing. I'm either supposed to learn something, I did something, I have to examine this. God, we are responsible for knowing the significance of what is happening to us, to pay attention to the signs. 479, nothing bad comes from God. Anything good that happens to you is from God, and anything bad that happens to you is from you. We have sent you as a messenger to the people, and God suffices as a witness. So that's two things in that verse. Nothing bad comes from God. And, you know, that's a perfect timing to bring up about the quality of God. We were talking last week in the after study for the Quran study, I think it was on Saturday, about how, for example, with circumcision in this, bring that topic up again, that is that command. supposed command, a quality from God. Would God advocate something like that? It says nothing bad comes from God. And we see the bad that happens from this procedure, the pain, the suffering. And yet here we have it right here in the Quran. Nothing bad comes from God. And we know about the verse about Abraham being tested by the satanic dream. And we know that we've been warned that if you believe that God would have that God would advocate such an idea of taking the life of his son to prove his worth, that's not understanding God, and that's blasphemous, that if you understand it in that way. So here we have nothing bad comes from God, and in our present day example of circumcision, what does that mean about us if we advocate this practice? What does it mean about what we think God's qualities are? Because we're fortunate to know, here it is, anything good that happens to you is from God, anything bad that happens is from you. And so this can inform us. It goes a long way to inform us in that area. So the other thing that's interesting here, it says, and God is suffice as witness. It says, we have sent you as a messenger, Muhammad, to the people, and God suffices as witness. And the footnote says, Muhammad was not given any proof of prophethood, hence the expression, God suffices as a witness. And it's interesting because the grammatical value of Muhammad is 92, and then 92 plus 79, which is the verse, equals 171, which is 19 times 9. So he's talking about Muhammad, that, you know, God suffices as a witness. Then 480, whoever obeys the messenger is obeying God. As for those who turn away, we did not send you as their guardian. They pledge obedience, but as soon as they leave you, some of them harbor intentions contrary to what they say. God records their innermost intention. You shall disregard them and put your trust in God. God suffices as an advocate. So whoever obeys God, the messenger, is obeying God. How can that be? How can that be? And that you ask yourself that. And we understand that God controls everything. God controls the hearts and the minds of everyone. And when God has a messenger down here, and in religious matters, when our messenger is explaining things to us, there's a controller behind that explanation. There's a controlling mind. There's a controller controlling the mind of that messenger, and we're commanded to obey. It says here that people pledge obedience, but as soon as they leave you, some of them harbor intentions contrary to what they say. So, and God records their innermost intentions. You should disregard them. So there, hypocrisy. People will say, yeah, I follow the message. Yeah, I'm follow the messenger, but they really don't. And we're supposed to disregard them. Maybe, I suppose it's easy to have suspicions of people, and you recognize that, oh, that person isn't doing what they say, and well, disregard them. We disregard a lot of people. We shall put our trust in God. God suffices as an advocate. Put our trust in God. Trust God. Oh, God, help us with this issue. We rely on you. Okay. What do you think? Is that a good place to stop?
Thanks, Jeff.
Oh, alhamdulillah. Thanks, everybody.
Oh, you sounds like you were a little bit that was a difficult session for you. Your mind was kind of.
You know what? I didn't read it beforehand, so I wasn't prepared very well. Or are you referring to just feelings of being challenged personally? Is that what you're thinking?
No, it just sounded like your mind was wandering, like you weren't really solid on what you were going to say, I guess.
Oh, and that is true. Usually I go through it and I decide what I'm going to talk about beforehand. And this one, I was just seeing what popped up. Yeah. Yeah, I just...
But Masha Allah, thank you for...
Alhamdulillah, thank you.
This, readings.
Yeah.
Assalamu Alaykum. I guess we were discussing God is doer of everything the other day, the concept that even, you know, whatever Satan does, and he's permitted to do by God as much harm or infliction, which fits the crime. You know, the punishment would not be more than that for anything which bad comes to us is the consequences of our own wrongdoings, but still allowed by God to Satan to afflict because we chose, or we made that mistake by choosing him or his ways. We were not in God's complete protection at the time. That is when something bad or happens to us, because we did not choose God as our God, or something wrong we did which went against God's system. This is a very big law to understand, and a very major part of our submission, that when we accept our failure to uphold God's absolute authority, or reflect, you know, and correct ourselves. Otherwise, you know, we go by heedless, and then the same thing will happen again. You know, so we can only have so many chances, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. God is the doer of everything. That was, we have 2 khutbahs on that subject. And it was what he called it, the messenger called it the most important khutbah that he'd ever given at that time. I think that's how he referred to it. This concept that God he's the doer of everything. And it's like God Almighty. I was saying this last time, God Almighty. We think of God can do everything, but the difference here is that no, he is doing everything. And so what does that mean? Just the ramifications of that God is doing everything. It goes in a lot of different directions. Let's take the things Satan's doing. Anybody want to expand upon that a little bit more? The things that Satan, how God's doing the things that Satan is doing?
Not me.
Yeah. Well, I have stabbed it a little bit, but just the idea that Satan is our tempter. He's the one. Satan is. Satan has ideas about that he can run this world. And we chose to be his constituents. We came here and said, yeah, I'll give it a try. Let's see if he can run this world. And so God is in control of everything, even though Satan isn't aware of that. He's not, I guess he's not aware of it. He must not be, he thinks he's still doing it. So he must be oblivious to the fact that God is doing everything. Well, Satan wants to do all these rebellious things. Well, we're not in God's kingdom. God placed us down here in this area so that Satan could operate, express these thoughts that he thinks he's doing. And us, those of us who volunteered to be part of it, we're suffering the consequences of our choice to be down here. Now, that's God doing everything. That he lets Satan think he's doing all these things, and he allows the things to happen that Satan is doing, but he's so above and beyond the picture that he only places people in his path or in the circumstances that deserve that to be. It's just part of it to understand it. In my understanding is you have to back up far enough to see the whole picture, that this is a whole demonstration of truth and justice. It's a demonstration, and it's already happened. It's already complete. And that God put everything together. That's my best stab.
Yeah, Masha Allah. So, I would like to comment on 475, 76.
Okay.
So when God talks about the believers being fearless, meaning that we should never fear people or any other thing, when it comes to, striving in the cause of God, or if you have to fight. And look at 477. A lot of people think that actually this happens even. Have you noted those who were told you do not have to fight? All you need to do is observe the contact prayers and give the obligatory charity. Then, when fighting was decreed for them, they feared the people as much as they feared God, or even more. They said, "Our Lord, why did you force this fighting on us? If only you respite us for a while. Say, the materials of this world are nil, while the hereafter is far better for the righteous, and you never suffer the slightest injustice." A lot of people think that exactly I hear these words that, all you have to do is the minimum criteria is this, you do contact prayers, give the obligatory charity. And what fighting? Obviously in those days, the fighting was more physical, or it was all mostly physical. It wasn't internet, or these things were not available, that it would be globally, that standing up for God would be like this, which is today. That, well, we just don't have to do it, and why is this difficult for path we have to take? Why can't we live with peace? Well, peace, what is peace? Peace only comes after all the problems are resolved. When there is a problem, then there is a war, there is a conflict. So the peace is only attained after, the truth wins. So basically, when we stand up, God doesn't need our standing up. We have to stand up, believe in the truth, and then stand up for it. And no matter what happens, we don't fear people. We don't fear a certain community or people's opinion about you, like, oh, maybe, there all kinds of fear tactics come. What what if we're not supposed to do that? Well, every time if there is an injustice, you have to stand up for that. This should be our natural instinct. And and we have to trust God that this is the right thing and this is how it should be. We then you leave it to God and never fear people, never fear whether you're going to be isolated or people will say all kind of insults and whatnot. It's part of the package. I mean, we have to compare that to the time when there were physical wounds. People even took that. So, and God decrees, you do not choose the fight. God even says you think you threw it. It was God who threw it. This goes hand in hand with God is running everything. All we have to do is we have to make our decision that we're going to stand up for the truth and we will speak up against the unjust, blasphemies and whatnot. And then God is the one who's actually allowing this to happen. It's decreed by God. We do not choose the battle. We only choose to side with the truth. God puts you in the situation. He says He decreed when the fighting was decreed. So obviously, God is running everything. Sorry, I just said a little too much. Okay, I'm done.
No, that was appropriate. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's a clear understanding. Well put. I think I'm not sure when I'm not sure what is motivating me to question that when I do question the understanding of when I've questioned it. I've questioned fighting and misunderstanding when we're fighting and when we're in a standing up for the truth, like standing for the truth and fighting. I was thinking, well, maybe sometimes we can be more offensive when we're fighting, and we hurt our souls when we think we're in a fight when actually no, this isn't really a fight, it's a debate. So that's kind of what muddied the waters for me, and it's very possible that it's my own ego and or my understandings of how to behave with people, and that would again be about ego preservation. It very well could be that kind of thing. I'm examining all of that.
Masha Allah, that's a very, very valid debate that you have. But I'm gonna ponder more upon it a little bit.
Yeah, please.
Between the difference between debate and fighting, and when is the fighting decreed? So what are the circumstances where you need to fight? And mostly it is to fight the oppression, right?
Okay.
When you have to fight against the oppressor. In cases where you're not allowed to practice your religion freely, or there is a blasphemous idea being pushed, and then you're saying no, and then you're being persecuted because of that, and majority is siding against you. We have an example of one of our brother, that he was being persecuted and people were calling him names and all that, though he was standing up for the truth. So that is definitely oppression. Those are grounds for starting. It was beyond the debate. When one party is saying, no, this is the way it is, you are actually a hypocrite if you're not like that, and you cannot perform You cannot even do sermon because you're an enemy of God. Things like that. So, but your belief tells you no. According to Quran, actually, it's you who are the falsifiers. You're the one who's making up wrong laws of God, lies attributing to God. And that's where the clash already has happened. It's beyond debate. They have already taken the power position and starting oppressing. Oppression in this time and age in these countries where we live, it has a different form. It won't be like, that we will be put in jail, but even countries like Pakistan, or some other countries where if you say these things, you could be put in jail, you could be killed. So that you can't even do anything over there. But here, the fighting is happening in a more intellectual way, and by the means of pen, and the message is going to people from the creature. The fighting is happening. It's the battleground is the creature as well, which is the internet. So the debate would be like you're giving somebody a message. You do it in the best possible manner. You keep on debating, until they say no. They get against you, and then you say to you is your religion, to me is mine, which you basically say that there is no more chances for you to. But I think it starts from oppression and fighting, verbal and mental, mostly. It's not going to happen in this time and age unless you are in those countries where actually you will be persecuted physically and put in jail or maybe killed.
Masha Allah. So let's see some of the other verses that we talked about. Here's interesting. God's tests are never unreasonable. 466. Had we decreed for them, you must offer your lives or give up your homes, they would not have done it, except for a few of them. Even if such a command was issued, had they done what they were commanded to do, it would have been better for them and would prove the strength of their faith. So he's saying God's tests are never unreasonable. It's interesting. Had God decreed, he goes to the extreme. If we'd offered you, said, give up your lives, give up your homes, they wouldn't have done it except for a few. So is that God saying that he's merciful in that he's not pushing the test that far? Is that your understanding of that? Or is it that, is it showing that there are just so few people that would be willing to give up their homes or their lives? Does anybody have any thoughts on that? If not, that's okay. Talk about whatever you want.
I do have one question.
Alhamdulillah.
Can they hear me?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Yes. I do have
Salãmun Alaykum.
Walaikum salam. It's on verse 59. The part where it says, "O you who believe, you shall obey God, and you shall obey the messenger, and those in charge among you." We discussed this before, not here, in my Quran study at my masjid. But if anybody can shed light on what that part means, and those in charge among you. Who would that be, who would they be talking about?
I am equally confused. I don't know. So, I don't know. It says, "Oh, believers, oh, you who believe, in charge among you." It seems like, okay, oh, you who believe, you believers, oh, you who believe, you shall obey God, and you shall obey the messenger and those in charge among you. So, yeah, I know. I've dissected this thing before, and it just it gets confusing. But I'm going to look up the word among, and I don't know if dissecting it is the right thing to do either. Maybe it should be just generally looked at, and I don't know. But among, it means in or through the midst of, association with, by. So it's mostly like in the company of, or the associates, or in the company. Let's see, in the midst of. So let's see. Let's read that. In the midst of, or in the company of. Let's see. Oh, you who believe, you shall obey God, and you shall obey the messenger and those in charge in the midst of you, or amongst you. So yeah, that to me seems limiting to me too, but I don't feel qualified to go further on that.
I have a little bit idea, but I could be wrong, but I think it's situational as well. For example, if messenger has appointed somebody for, let's say, going to the war and to listen, like he has appointed like somebody who would deliver instructions for certain things. So if God and his messenger and among you, like maybe temporarily appointed like a person in charge, like, okay, in my absence, you listen to this or that.
Right.
You know?
Right.
Otherwise, I don't see anybody, like, because I think this has been very abused as well.
Yeah.
Like the clerics and mullahs, being in charge of religious matters.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think there is any kind of clergy or hierarchy system in submission, though. It could be a temporary situation where, in the absence of messenger, if certain duties are divided, and okay, in my absence, you guys are gonna listen to this person. If I think specifically if it is the situation of war, because then war is coming later on as well, right? That's what I can think of, because appointed by messenger for that time and period. Otherwise, I don't think it is forever. Who would be in charge of who in this time and age?
Yeah,
right.
That's a good way to put it. I have to share this story. It makes me laugh. When I was a Sunni, so I was a Sunni Muslim, kind of new at it at the time, back in the early 90s, and there was a guy who I was talking to him that I like to play music, and he was saying, well, I don't know if that's good for you if you play music. And so he was from Jordan. And so he said, I know a great sheikh. He's a great man. And so I said, we'll call him on the phone and find out. Okay, great. So he calls him on the phone. And the guy says to me, okay, I'll tell you, but you must obey what I say if I give you my my ruling. And I was like, okay. And he ruled that it was haram or bad to play music. And of course I ignored him. But anyway, so that's an example of somebody who saw himself as the the one in charge among us. Anyway, I just had to, yeah.
Well, I would like to say, for example, if you look at it in terms of, let's say, you know, like God says, we should be united, right? So let's say you want to do something together, we should do it in harmony. And let's say we pick someone, like we decide, you know, let's say, hey, let's say Jeff is going to be in charge of such and such, right? And then, you know, obviously Jeff is not going to victimize the rest of the bunch also. So, you know, if we all agree that, hey, Jeff is going to be in charge and, you know, these are the rules we agree upon. And then Jeff says, hey, you know, today let's do this thing this way. And then everybody agrees. And then we just go ahead and do it. So that's kind of like how I see it. I mean, it could be for like cleaning, for example. It could be like doing some kind of charity work. You know, it could be any number of things, and you know, you could make someone in charge of something, and you know, just kind of have that sort of harmony. But it doesn't obviously, you know, turn into like, you know, obeying each other in like religious, you know, matters like the ones you described, for example. Like, can I listen to music or not?
So you know, that's excellent. I thought that's a really good way to put it too, because we've all been in group settings, whether it's work or not, where, you know, it's always better if once somebody's in charge, you just say, okay, I'm your pawn, tell me what to do. And it just makes it flow a lot easier. You just submit to their way, and you get these people who are saying, no, we shouldn't have done it like that. We should do it like this. And it just causes so much mess. So maybe it's just as simple as that, for efficiency and practicality, make things run smoothly, that kind of thing. Right. Interesting.
It sounds like people were hinting at another question. Not what does the verse mean, but how does somebody actually become one of the people that is to be in charge among us? It seems like from all the comments, that's what we were getting at, kind of. Like, who decides who's in charge of what? I always thought if somebody has knowledge, obviously more than other people in a certain subject, we would probably obey that guy. But I'm guessing, but that's out of religion. I mean, that's outside of the subject of religion. Like if we were doing something and there was a guy there who was like a graduate in that subject, and we're like, let's just let this guy be the leader. But this seems to be in charge of, well, maybe it's not only about religion, the verse. Maybe it's, well, is it about religious matters? Or is it about any kind of matters?
Well, that's what I was thinking, is that it seems like a systematic principle that if you choose a leader and then fall in behind and accomplish your task. I was taking what Salãmun said, that it was a explanation how systems work, in a sense, an efficiency thing. That's how I took it, but I may be wrong.
Yeah, like an administrative thing, you know, or let's say if at some point we had like a submitter nation, and then we had people in charge of different things. So, you know, we would obviously follow the Quranic system, but then obviously there will be things that need to be carried out, operations from a day-to-day basis that, you know, you would need to handle. So obviously, you know, on a grander scale of things, I guess, you know, you could look at it, but from like a smaller scale, you know, you could have something really small and someone needs to manage it, and you pick somebody to manage it. And then they decide, you know, after consulting with everyone, like what way it should go. And obviously everybody has to agree with this person's, you know, his job would be to first convince everyone and then carry on whatever task it is, if everybody agrees.
It's kind of happened with our Quran study that way, in a sense. You know, we kind of, you know, you've helped facilitate this, put the pieces together, the mechanism, how it's going to work, and then you know, pretty much we just say, okay, you know, all right, my turn. Okay, your turn now. It's kind of fallen that way.
Yeah, the system, like, somebody, if mutually decided, so and so is in charge of this thing, collecting charities, for example, there is, or, you decided so and so is going to be calling for adhan, matters of whatever, believers matters. And so the system can work smoothly, and then you have because we have to go by unanimous consensus, so already decided, so this person is in charge of these matters, then we stick to that. It becomes, so there is no conflict once it is decided by everybody in all fairness. Yeah, otherwise a lot of traditional Muslims have created hierarchy, and they are knowledgeable, and now they're in charge, and these mullahs are beating kids in the masjid literally, and parents don't even say anything. I see these videos all the time, that how brutally they're beating children in these madrasas for disobeying the mullah, and parents have given complete authority to them. It's just insane. And they say, okay, maybe, I don't know, everything from the Quran has been abused in these sense.
And molesting them at the same time.
Molesting them, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's just, there is nobody to watch them.
I have to bring something up real quick here, that I think that there's a real art to not to have a mindset when you're reading the Quran, to read it for what it is and not to read something into it. I'm really impressed with those who can just see it and see it simply, and not read things into it, because the Quran is straightforward, right? And I really think that's a skill that I think it's a discipline to be applied to be able to read the verses and not read something into it.
Right, like not take it out of context in a way.
Is it just context? I wasn't sure if that was it. If it is that simple, that'd be awesome. But for me, even I don't know, I get the sense that I get the sense that that you have that skill, Suleiman. So if it's context, I don't know. I'm not sure if it's context. I'm gonna have to examine that some more. But I think we were talking about something last week about this too. We were talking about women and not reading into it, or something about, I can't remember what it was, but there's a skill. There's something about just seeing, not expanding it, not looking deep into it, not trying to find regulations where there are no regulations. Oh, you know where it came up? It came up with that about qualities, when we were discussing that women or men are given qualities.
Right.
And just to expose myself, and here I am, I'm digging in there. What are these qualities? And I'm trying to find everything, and I think there's a discipline, and an appropriate discipline to restrain and to just not read into things.
Wait, you said to read and see what the words are, but then you said not read into things is actually two different things.
Oh, okay. Explain.
To actually look at the words and see what the words are, and then not read into it, it actually seems like it's not exactly the same.
Yeah, well, I mean, also you could see it, point. Not try to read between the lines, like just see what it says. So study it carefully, but obviously you don't like make inferences that are not there.
Right. I think we're all guilty that, when we read something, we bring a whole we bring understandings with us. I don't know. Maybe it isn't that difficult. See, maybe I'm doing it right now.
No, I've seen it. I've seen it go on in Quran.
Oh my, yeah. I guess I need the discipline. You guys are all fine.
For yourself.
Yeah, exactly.
Just kidding.
Oh man.
Yeah, I see what you're talking about. People read verses, and instead of seeing the words, they hear their voice, their interpretations in their head more than they than see the words that are written down there. And sometimes maybe it could be a regurgitation of something you heard before, or something you thought before. But I just did it now, and I just read the verse we were talking about, and it said, "Obey the God and the messenger and those in charge among you. If you dispute in any matter, you shall refer it to God and the messenger." Interesting. So those in charge among you, then if you have a dispute, talk to God and bring it to God and the messenger to get it resolved.
So how did you do it? What were you exposing yourself with? What did you do wrong?
Me?
Yeah, you said I just did it there. What I didn't see it.
I didn't see the part where it said, like, well, according to this verse, it was saying if there's a problem with listening to those in charge among you, then you bring it to God and the messenger.
Oh, I see. The next verse. Right.
What would the messenger do, though? The messenger would refer it to God in the Quran, right? The last messenger that we know of, he said everything he uses the Quran, right?
Right.
Yeah, it's a source. However, it's interesting that God was also orchestrating all kinds of events that were happening around us at the time that were demonstrating principles, Quranic principles, but were providing real life examples. One being the Jarvik heart example, where he was showing how Jesus was not crucified, that actually Jesus had left in the similar fashion that the guy who was given the Jarvik heart, he had had a stroke and he was actually gone, but yet he lived for, I think, another 19 days, something like this. That's a scenario where it's a real life illustration that is demonstrating a Quranic principle.
Right. I think also another thing I remembered about this in charge among us is also the concept of like Quranic or Islamic judges. I don't know if anybody's heard the Messenger of the Covenant talk about it, you know, that like in a submitter nation, like you'd have judges that will rule based on the principles of Quran, right? And then, you know, if there's disputes and whatnot, you know, then obviously you know, there'll be these people that will be able to judge, like if it's a property or anything like that, they would judge based on Quran. So,
did you say that Solomon is in charge? I'm out of here.
Jeff is
I tried very hard not to say that.
You don't obey him, man.
No, I'm not in charge.
I was dancing around it, so yeah.
I'm in charge of the app, maybe developing the app and just maintaining the app.
That's not in charge. You just do the work.
Yeah.
You're in charge of nothing.
Salãmun Alaykum, Yusuf.
God, I'm just going to do my prayer quickly.
Okay. Oh, yeah, it's a lot. It's sunset a lot over here. Oh, Yosef's here.
Assalamu alaikum.
Assalamu alaikum.
Assalamu alaikum, Yusuf.
So,
can you hear me?
Hey, yes, we can hear you. Yep.
Assalamu alaikum.
I remember the other day we were talking about dreams, and it happened to be Joseph.
Exactly.
Joseph. And then I looked at his Facebook, and I was like, wait, his Facebook picture, he's handsome too. So we got a Joseph who's into dreams, and he's a good-looking dude.
Well,
I'm not gay. For saying that.
Edward, you don't have to give this disclaimer every time you appreciate somebody.
Plus, we know you're married, so it's okay.
I don't want you to be unfriendly or something.
We're not judging your intentions at all.
Oh, okay.
Well, Yusuf has left already.
He left.
oh, that was
You made him run away.
Oh no! What, did I say something wrong? Maybe.
No, I think he got disconnected.
Oh,
there he is.
Oh,
He's connected. Oh, so Yusuf, I did my homework on the sleeping thing. I transcribed all the information on dreams that
Assalamu Alaykum.
Assalamu Alaykum. Assalamu Alaykum.
Was disconnected, connected, disconnected.
Oh, okay.
I heard almost everything. Continue, please.
So yeah, you know what? I should make this put this on screen or something, but I would like to read this. Do you guys mind? It's a bunch of.
If you have it on text, you can also post it on the app so we can read it if you want us to read it.
Yeah, let me see. Let me try to do that. Yeah, okay. I'll try to do that. You guys go ahead and talk. I'm going to try to do that.
Okay.
Can you guys see what's I shared or not? No.
I can hear you.
Okay. Do you see that on your screen? Did I share something on anybody's screen? Do you see?
I see you, but
oh, okay. I'm trying to share a document, but I guess I don't know how to do it. Okay.
Well, would you like to give us a little summary of that?
I would like to read it if I could.
Yeah, sure.
Okay. So this is Quran study 45 at 59 minutes and 38 seconds. Yeah.
Do you see the screen share button?
I did. I tried it and it didn't work. I went in there and I saw it says open a shared document. And I tried to do that. I cut and paste. I put it on there and it didn't seem to do it.
Not a shared document. So on the right, on the left bottom corner of the screen, you see like an icon of like a screen.
Oh, yeah. Uh-huh.
So you click on that, and it will ask you to choose what window you want to share.
Oh, okay.
Whether it's your desktop or the entire screen.
Okay. So will it choose a tab if I want?
Yeah, it will choose, yeah. I mean, if you select the browser, yeah, then you should see it, yeah.
Well, I'll give it a try.
So we'll all see it instead of your video. We'll start seeing that too.
Okay.
But initially, I was suggesting that you could also post the text in the global channel on the pen. That's what I was referring to earlier. But if you want to share, then that's the way you can share, God willing.
Okay, I'm gonna try this. How's that?
Yeah, you can see it now.
Okay.
Yeah.
So there it is. If you can get it on your screen, here. Let me try to get that bigger.
Yeah.
There we go. Okay.
You can see it in landscape. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. I'll go ahead and read it, and you guys can read if you want.
Sure.
So it's Quran Study 45. It's Deja Vu and Dreams. Sleeping is like death. As a matter of fact, our souls wander during the night, and we see visions of dreams. Someone says something, and he says, no, our soul is connected with the body, but it wanders and goes all over the place. Death means the connection between the soul and the body is severed. However, I want to go back to the concept that we have that death is like one night of sleep. It is still true, I think he said, because it is a finite period of time. But when you divide by infinity, it is equal to 0. The whole life of this world is less than 1 hour or a blink of an eye. So that period in the suppository is very short compared to the hereafter. Then at 108, he says, only God knows the future unless God...
Suppository?
So, I think he's talking about how the souls, when we die, we go to some place like before we came here, we're in a suppository someplace. And then when you... what is it?
Depository.
Depository. Oops. Uh-oh. Suppository. Isn't that a thing you put in? Uh-oh. Let's how would I spell that? Depository. I think I got that wrong.
DIP, yeah.
Yeah, depository. There it is. Suppository. Oops.
Yeah.
Yep. Thanks for pointing that out. So anyway, yeah, so he's talking about that when you sleep, your soul can wander. That when you, it's like death, the soul can wander. But he goes more into it. Gets pretty good. Only God knows the future unless God wills to reveal certain information through a messenger that he wants to deliver this news to the rest of the world. But to complete the question, sometimes we are given glimpses of our videotape. Each one of us has a videotape already recorded before we were born. And when we sleep and our soul is out there free, one of the qualities of the soul, which is has some part of the qualities of God, one of the qualities is to travel in time. So you can travel in time to he was back in 1988. So he said, you can travel in time to 1998 and you see, so here's my favorite example. You see yourself in Moscow buying a diamond ring from a midget in Moscow, and you wake up in the morning, it feels like a dream. He said, what's this Moscow midget diamond ring? Crazy dream. But time goes by. In 1988, I think he said 1988, but he meant 1998, I think. And here you are in Moscow buying a diamond ring from a midget, and you remember immediately, yeah, it happened Yeah, he remembers that dream. So it happens to almost every one of us, actually. You find yourself in a situation and you remember that you've seen this before, and you swear, you know, you saw, it's simply a glimpse of your videotape. You just, you can fast forward, then you can play for a second, and then you come back. Then somebody, I think it was Carol, told a story about knowing somebody who was to become her husband. It just popped into her head while awake. And Dr. Khalifa said, obviously you had a glimpse of your videotape, but you were fully awake. So it is possible. And then it's 113. It says, in response to some knowledge about a future husband from a person's dream, he asked her, how old were you when you got married? She answered, about 19. He said, so you had this vision 3 years in advance. This is definitely a property of the human being. So it has nothing to do with belief or disbelief. It has to do with the nature of things. We have a body and a soul, and the soul has the quality of traveling into the future. A woman says that she dreams and things pop into her head, and then Dr. Khalifa says, and it comes to pass. She has a dream and it pops in her head, and it comes to pass. Well, of course, he says, well, of course, the Quran teaches us that dreams have, some dreams have some significance. We have Joseph's dream. We have the king's dream, the 7 fat cows, and the 7 skinny cows. Now, these need interpretation. The 7 fat cows and 7 skinny cows meant 7 good years followed by 7 bad years. There's no connection between cow and year. So this is another type of dream, and God teaches us that they have significance. And many dreams are just nonsense, and some have to do with your physical condition, whether you have a headache or stomach ache or you ate too much. Then I think somebody asked, how do you know when it's a nonsense dream or a dream that means something? Dr. Khalifa responds, you just forget about them. Don't worry about them. And I'm telling you, if God wants you to know something, like in the case of Carol, he will let you know. God will find a way. We'll see to it that you know certain things that he wants you to know. So don't worry about dreams. Don't try to interpret them either, because as you can see, there is no connection between cows and years. Also, there were 2 people with Joseph in the prison. One of them had a dream about birds eating bread off the head and he becoming crucified. So there is a basis for these things. What is the connection? Bread on his head and the birds eating some and being crucified. This is a gift that God gave Joseph. The other guy was serving wine. He became the king's bartender. It is the bartender who brought Joseph to the attention of the king. This is the whole idea. This is how God arranged the event. So that was quite illuminating about dreams and stuff. And then later he goes on to out-of-body experiences. Let's see, should I read this too? Yeah, I might as well just read the rest of it. So they talk at 1930 about out-of-body experiences. And Dr. Khalifa had an out-of-body experience. And it happened to that Ihsan Ramadan. She was also, I think that's her name. 57 minutes. It talks about stories of out-of-body experience. And this doctor was talking about a blind man who sees his body for the first time when he had a near-death experience. We call them NDEs now, or spiritually transformative. I think. Anyway, he says, this is where Dr. Khalifa starts talking. There is no pain. Actually, this tells us exactly what Jesus felt when they crucified him. Because Jesus was gone. God is, look how God is teaching us real life experiences. This is and he's talking about the guy with him. This is a physical scientist, a surgeon, you know. He's not a spiritualist. He's also very spiritual, laughter. I didn't mean it in that way, but I mean, he is a scientist. He's very critical. God is teaching us by these There's a book, of course, that puts all these stories in one book about out-of-body experiences. Some of you may have seen the book. There are many people who doctors were operating on, and they say exactly the same thing. They watch the doctors operate on their bodies, and then they decide to go back, because that's not death. These near-death experiences are not death. I mean, obviously, this fellow was destined to live beyond that point. But God is teaching us, telling us exactly what the deal is. And this is what we read here in the Quran. Adam and Eve were out of their bodies. They were having fun in paradise. And when they disobeyed God's law, they came into this body, which tells us this is how we go to Satan's kingdom. Since you listened to Satan, you didn't listen to God, you belong in Satan's kingdom. So goodbye. So goodbye, which we see in 7:24. He said, go down as enemies of one another. On earth shall be your habitation and provision for a while. And then at another place, a follower talks about how she learned in a dream. It wasn't an interpretation. It's just literally, there was a discussion in a dream about when the Quran says that we bear witness that and it was talking about the believers of the people who say that they say Shahada with Muhammad, that they can't say Shahada with Muhammad because it's a lie that they bore witness. And she actually had heard this discussion, this teaching in a dream that she had. And that's what I found on dreams. Sorry about so long, but I thought it was worth sharing.
That's what dreams are made of.
That's what dreams are made of. Alhamdulillah. Okay, so okay, so how do I turn it off now? There, I did it. Mm-hmm. Okay.
Share the text. You could post it in the chat also.
Okay. Let me go. Do I get? Okay. How do I do that? Let's see.
Just copy and paste.
Okay. But I mean, how do I go to the chat area?
Go to the pen.chat.
Oh, okay.
And log in.
Okay.
I mean, so when you said just forget about them, don't worry about it, don't think about it. It's not like it's a law or something, like it's a commandment that you can't think about your dreams or try to interpret them, right? Or it's a sin or it's haram or something, right?
Yeah, he just said don't worry about it. Like, don't try to interpret them. For example, like if you have a very cryptic dream, like the 7 fat cows, I mean, there's no way that you're going to find what it means, right? So just it's okay. It says if God wants you to know something, he'll let you know whatever way, you know. Like if God really wants you to know, in other words, like if God really wants you to know that there is a drought coming and you're going to know it, you're supposed to know it, you know, you're going to find out, like God is going to let you know some other way. Like don't think that, hey, I have to figure out this dream that maybe there might be a drought and God might want to tell me, is trying to tell me something or something like that. That's how that's why it gives the examples of the cows with the ears. So, you know, so don't worry about like, hey, what might my dream mean, and try to interpret them and stuff like that, you know. But, you know, we also have this other study where he talked about how God will let you know things. And even with superstitions, like, you know, if you think, I'm paraphrasing, but, you know, if you see a butterfly in the morning and you believe that if you see a butterfly in the morning, you have a good day, then, you know, God will make it so that when you wake up in the morning, you'll see a butterfly, you know, and that way God will let you know you're going to have a good day, for example, you know. So, you know, God can let you know things if he wants through dreams. I mean, you don't have to interpret them if they're very sort of straightforward. God's trying to tell you something. I mean, he's going to let you know too. The thing is, I mean, obviously we understand. I mean, what Jeff described is the mechanism of dreams, right? But the thing is, God is the doer of it. So if God wants you to know something, you know, He will let you know through that mechanism, whatever the mechanism He has established. You know, He will let you know through your dream, as God talks about, for example, about Muhammad and the people. You know how He showed the people fear in number to strengthen Muhammad. You know, so things like that. But there was really no interpretation there that was needed. I mean, it was just a thing that he saw in his dream, and you know. But I guess what I see from this is, like, Joseph had the ability, by God's leave and the knowledge, to interpret like really cryptic, really complex, hard to understand dreams that nobody could, you know, understand.
Yeah, you know, the thing I got out of it was that you don't have to worry that you don't understand your dreams. You don't have to worry about that. Oh, did I miss an important message from God that I missed? You don't have to. That's how I took it. That don't worry. If God wants you to know something, it's going to happen. You know, so that's how I was taking that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think another thing I was reading this morning about God's mathematical signs for the believers. I mean, I know it's not like directly related, but you know, among God's assurances are, you know, mathematical signs also that we see. Like, you know, you go somewhere and you see number 19 or something like that. You know, so God will let you know through those things as well that, you know, He's with you if you follow God's commandments. So He can let you know in different ways. I'm going to find the footnote, God willing. This is in Surah 5, verse 12. So the footnote says, it talks about conditions for staying within God's protection, right? It says, God had taken a covenant from the children of Israel, and we raised among them 12 patriarchs. And God said, I'm with you so long as you observe the contact prayer salat, give the obligatory charity zakat, and believe in my messengers and respect them, and continue to lend God alone of righteousness. I will then remit your sins and admit you into gardens with flowing streams. Anyone who disbelieves after this has indeed strayed off the right path. And the footnote for this says, if you fulfill the requirements stated in this verse, God will let you know that He's with you. You will have no doubt about it. Prominent among God's signs are mathematical signs for those who understand the Quran's miracle, Appendix 1.
Hey, Jeff.
Yeah, you know all about these NDEs. You want to talk about that?
Oh, I was so happy when I actually read that from Rashad, because he was one of the first ones that I saw that actually talked about it. And yeah, I've been studying it for like almost 35 years, and I think everybody should check out Ibn Alexander experience. And you know, there are a lot of people who are Muslim that, you know, this is universal. Everybody experiences it. And the out-of-body experience, and they've changed it from NDE, near-death experience, to spiritually transformative experience. And virtually everyone, whether they were atheist or whatever religion, every one of them came back and said that there is a God and there is a hereafter. And they talk about the immenseness of God's love that we can't even comprehend. It talks about all kinds of wonderful things that actually you can find them in the Quran, which was, so I was really happy when I read that, because like I said, he was the first one. It was like, oh, finally, you know, that this is, that was, you know, brought out. Also too, everybody should check out named and she had cancer, and
could you repeat that?
Repeat what?
The name you checked out.
Oh, I'm sorry, Anita Mirjani. She's Indian. She had cancer, and you know, just briefly a synopsis. And her best friend had cancer. Her father had cancer. Both of them had died before her, and she was so paranoid about getting it that she was like doing everything correctly, you know, eating right and not doing. And anyway, she got cancer anyway. And she was like 36 hours. They say that she had less than a day left to live, and she was in a coma. And in that coma, she was, you know, out of her body, and she saw her brother coming on a plane. And anyway, she entered this place beautifully, because she said, imagine that you're in a huge, gigantic, far as the eye can see warehouse, and everything's black, and you get this tiny camera, and you know, have, I mean, a tiny flashlight, and you see what the flashlight shows you. And she said, that's literally how it is on earth for us. And she said, the first feeling and understanding that you get, and this is, you know, in the Quran, she said, the first understanding you get when you leave your body and you enter this other realm is that the earth experience was really an illusion, was not the real life. And she said, so imagine you have this flashlight, and imagine suddenly somebody turns on all the lights, and for one moment you can look all around you and you see everything. And then the light is turned off again, and even though you have the flashlight, you never forget what you saw. You can't pretend it's not there. So your understanding of life and the connection that we all have with each other and to life and to earth and all of that, that never goes away. But she said that when she entered this realm, her father had died. She said, I felt suddenly their presence, and I could tell my father was coming toward me. She said, there's no religion, there's no gender, there's no male or female. And she said she thought her father would be angry with her because, you know, he wanted her to marry someone, and she ran away 3 days before the wedding. This is, you know, in her life. She ran away 3 days before her wedding, shamed the whole family, everybody. And so she thought that because her father had died before she married, you know, someone that she loved. And she thought that he was coming toward her with anger, but he came with nothing. And she said he told her was to live your life with absolutely no fear. And it doesn't mean don't fear God. It means, you know, don't allow Satan to make you afraid to live, and afraid to, because when you have God with you, we shouldn't be afraid. We know that. So they kept telling her this message, and they kept telling her, they said that she had a choice. She could either go forward or she could return. And she didn't want to return. She said, I don't want to return. Look at my body. It's all sick. And they said, you know, everything will be different. And one of the things that the message that she got very clearly is that because of the way she felt, because of the way she lived her life, she saw that, you know, we can bring on our illnesses because we're not taking care of ourselves. We're not coming first in that sense. But I don't want to say it in that way, because it's much more, you really have to have a lot more thorough understanding. But anyway, the point is that they told her, if you go back, you'll be fine. And so she came back. She said, okay. She came back, and within 2 or 3 weeks, there was no cancer. And the doctors kept telling her, we know you have it, we just can't find it. And within a month, she was home and the cancer was gone, and she began to live her life in a completely different way, you know. And so I love those stories. And the one with the Eben Alexander, he didn't believe in God. He was very scientific. What was he, a brain surgeon or something like that? And he was a scientist, and he had an experience because he was dead. And he had no idea that he was adopted. And when he was on the other side, he found out. He also saw this beautiful girl, and he didn't know who she was, but she was his guide when he was in that realm. And when he came back, he actually did the research. He found out that, yes, he was adopted. When he went to meet his blood family, there was a picture of this girl, and he found out that was his sister who had died about 10 years before. So there is definitely something. I've had out-of-body experiences. There's definitely something to it. So I was so happy when I liked how advanced Rashad was in his thinking in that way.
Mashallah. I would just add one thing on Eben Alexander. That one's amazing because this guy is a brain surgeon. He didn't believe in this stuff. And he had total brain death. This guy had total brain death. And he was watching them deal with him when he was in total brain death. And he knows how to read these charts and stuff. I mean, the equipment. He knows how to read the equipment. And so what it literally, God has given us proof through this example that scientifically, that even though the brain is dead in the body, it doesn't mean that the brain is the soul. It means that, because people always try to say, well, it's just brain activity going on and all this other stuff, but that's not what's happening. So I'm going to.
Or they had that one where the angel was next to this person who was about to have surgery, and he told her to watch, and she saw an angel enter the doctor's use their hands to do the surgery, which I thought was really interesting.
Hey, Chip, what was the last verse you read? Hey, Jeff, can you hear me? Can someone hear me? Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, I think it was 481.
Okay, 481.
I'm not 100% sure. Let me see. Yeah, I think so. I think it was 481.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, well, I think we often come across people that have accept anything that the messenger that say that they accept the Quran, right? But they have a problem accepting what the messenger says, and they have a problem obeying the messenger. And 480 is a very good verse in that it tells us that whoever is obeying God is obeying the messenger. Whoever's obeying the messenger is obeying God. So basically, God is the one who sends the messengers. So if the messenger is giving you some sort of instructions or some sort of commandments and you're following them, you're actually obeying God, because God is the one who sends them. So whoever doesn't want to obey the messenger and whatever he preaches, then they in fact they're just they don't want to obey God, because this is God's system. He is God's appointed teacher, and as believers in God alone, we're commanded to obey God and His messenger. and we must, you know, God said the righteous believers will definitely do that, you know. And then it's interesting that you know, the following verse says they pledge obedience, but as soon as they leave you, some of them harbor intentions contrary to what they say. And so and then that's why, like, you know, we see tons of people that you know, claim that they would you know, listen to you know, we will be submitters in God alone and will obey the messenger, but you know, soon after the messenger passed away, like, you know, they actually, you know, or even while he was alive, like, they weren't truly like following him, and you know, doing things contrary to what he was saying. And I guess it's a pattern that we see with you know, these people and how it deteriorates. And I liked your comment also, mashallah, about 460, about believers are hypocrites. And yeah, I mean, it's just I can't help but tie that into circumcision, because you know, it's like a prime. I haven't seen an example as clear as this. You know, obviously, you know, you also have examples of people that, you know, will be, for example, say they're you know, let's say they claim to believe in Quran, right? But then they, you know, worship Muhammad or the saints and stuff like that. But then, like, for, you know, the example of circumcision, I think this is also a good example where people that say that they will follow what was revealed to us and what was revealed before us, but then they uphold the unjust laws of their idols. Now, also, there's a distinction between what was revealed before us and the unjust laws of the idols, because we know that some of the Bible, obviously, you know, got tampered with as well. So those things are there, and so God says that they were commanded to reject such laws, and it is the devil's wish to lead them far astray, when they're told, "Come to what God has revealed and to the messengers. You see the hypocrites shunning you completely." And I thought I had seen that before, but you know, and I was like, okay, you know, it happens, but I hadn't seen that like the way I have seen it now so clearly, you know, the shunning you completely part.
Yeah. Emphasis on completely.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, you've seen it before, but this time you felt it.
Yeah.
Oh, man. Yeah. No, I know. I see that too.
You know, the
Right.
shun,
What?
you know, the word shun is not just to disregard or ignore you. It's also to, like, when you shun somebody, you can I think the way I've always known it is you also publicly shame them and put them down, and whatever it is they're doing or saying, you make a public example of rejecting it, you know. Otherwise, you could just walk away, but to shun them is making a statement. That's the way I've always known the word. I think it could be wrong, but I've always known it to have a more than just a. You guys are. I'm not going to repeat it.
No. You know what? I just looked it up too. I agree. That was a good word to look up. It says here's what it says: shun, persistently avoid, ignore, reject someone or something through antipathy or caution. Evade, issue. So yeah, I think you got the harsher form of shunning.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, it says fight shy of, shy away from.
Mm.
But I agree with you, Edward, that I'm surprised that
Ostracize. Sorry.
yeah,
Oh.
ostracize.
I
Yeah,
got
that's a good.
ostracized.
Yeah, that's a good one. That's
Oh,
that's right.
repudiate.
Yeah, there you go.
That's not just saying like, well, he said something I don't like, I'm just gonna ignore him. No, it's like I'm gonna publicly go against it.
Right.
Yeah.
Abnegate.
Right. Snub.
Disavow.
Yeah.
I guess my point was the Quran could have had another word there, like they ignore you or they reject you. But for some reason, the word shun is there. You know, it's a little bit more.
Yeah, it feels more pointed.
Yeah.
Yeah. Also, we read about the believers being fearless.
Yeah.
And I mean, I think like it's such an easy way to idolize someone. Like when you're afraid, like the Messenger of the Covenant like gives examples of, let's say, you're talking to your boss or someone, and it's about something you're going to do in the future, and you hesitate. Well, you hesitate from saying God willing, because
right.
you're afraid of this person's reaction. Well, you've just idolized him.
Yeah. Yep.
And I mean, that's huge.
Yep.
So, but I can see the amount of freedom and that you experience when you don't have that fear, because your only Lord and Master is the Lord of the universe at that time, and so you're not afraid, and you're totally comfortable in yourself, and you're completely a sovereign person, who's not tied to any other masters or lords that dictate how they live or what they do or what they say. Their only real worry is what God thinks of them and how God sees them. And that, I think, not only brings a great feeling of liberation, but it also guarantees your salvation. I mean, it is essential for us to have that quality. We as monotheists, submitters who do not have any idols, like we have to eliminate all forms of idol worship in our lives. So whether it's a person in our workplace or neighborhood or family or friends or anything like that, where we feel that we might be so afraid of them that will go against what God says. Well, there is your sign that you're committing idol worship, and we have to try to eliminate that fear. And I guess the only real way to eliminate it would, I mean, obviously, it will be to grow our souls and worship God. But like, really, we have to understand how great, I guess, how great and how powerful God is, and what God is really, and these little tiny, dinkies, these little tiny creatures that we pay so much importance to, or their approval is really just nothing. I mean, when people see, it's like when these people see on the day of judgment, like how great God is and how all His power and all His glory, like they imagine like how shocked people will be. Like, yeah, I have God, and then I had this person, my boss, who I was so afraid of that I couldn't, ask him, I don't know, to do my Friday prayer or something, or couldn't say God willing because I was afraid. But God tells us that if we put God first and we're not afraid of people, God will make everything that we really want happen that way. But if we end up being fearful of people because one or reason or another, we will not get what we're trying to get out of that deal. Things will work against us and we'll be unhappy and miserable. But if we do what God says, let's say, like you say, God willing, example, to your boss or something, or you go for your Friday prayer and you make time, God will make it so that these people will respect you because God controls them, right? So, Masha, I think that's a good reminder there for 475 for us. And then it talks about God is doing everything too in 478, which is, I think, very fitting here. Masha Allah.
I was thinking of the example of how to fight your fears, and it seems that like if you stick you're afraid of swimming. Well, you start first by hanging onto the side, and you work yourself out. I think we use our life to demonstrate that there was nothing to fear there. I think, you know what I mean? You try it. It's like, it's not that you wait until you don't fear. It's that you fear and you do it anyway. And then you psychologically, the rest of you will catch up with your courage if you have any, that
right.
Kind of
thing. Right. I feel that as long as you fear, like you're not going to have the courage to do anything, but once you don't have the fear, you'll have the courage to go beyond it. Like if you're afraid, that, well, but yeah, you could try it and see, like obviously it's not going to be easy all the time, like it happens to all of us. I think different, people might be different, situations might be different, but things always happen. Like you have to do your prayer somewhere in public, you're afraid, hey, like what if I get dirty looks and things like that, and it's really like
at the airport.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, but Masha Allah, I mean, God will take care of it, God's promise.
Yeah. That's what you have to tell yourself. You have to say, yeah, we have to fight our jinn. It's our jinn, right? The jinn's trying to tell us, no, you can't do that.
Yeah, I mean, God says it's a devil's system to instill fear into his subjects. So fear is a tool of the devil. Right? He uses that to exploit and control what you do. I mean, if you look at cults, right? I mean, they're driven by fear because, they're always afraid of losing the approval, or they're afraid of losing the support. And there's fear of being ostracized, and so there's always fear is a huge factor in people worshiping idols.
Who was it? I think it was Delano Roosevelt. I can't remember who said, "There's nothing to fear but fear itself." So it's definitely prevalent in culture. It's not a new concept in society, but
it also means that you have to be extremely self-aware, and most people are really not self-aware. Most people, they do whatever they do, and it's easy to say, well, you shouldn't be afraid, but You know, people who have PTSD, people who have been traumatized, people who've had terrible experiences, who've had, you know, murders and things like that in their family, or witnessed awful things. You can't just say, well, just, you know, don't be afraid, because that doesn't work. It really is it's a very slow desensitizing, you know. But that person has to be aware and has to want it, or it's, you know, you can't fight. And the wrong word is fight, you know, because when you fight, there's automatic resistance. You know, you accept the fear, you look at it and you say, okay, this is what I'm feeling. And you begin to ask yourself, well, why? Why? Where is this coming from? And then you move to it. And if you're afraid of people, you know, for example, you don't go in the middle of the street and put your prayer carpet out there and stop traffic so you can show you're not afraid. You know, you start out small, you know, and until you desensitize yourself and you become braver, you know. I mean, fear.
Right. You know, today I was watching this clip on, I think it was somewhere on Facebook, and it was Jackie Chan, and you know, it was talking about like his whole life experience and like how he's the artist who has done the most amount of real stunts in Hollywood, and he has broken every single bone in his body, like at any given point in time. And then in the end, like, and all the struggles that he went through, like his whole life journey was like, you know, with all music and everything in the background was so like trying to make it very moving and everything. But at the end, it says Jackie Chan's thing is the only two things he's afraid of in life is one is needles, and then the other is fear of public speaking.
Well, it's you know, they've done.
What?
They've done studies.
I think she.
Yeah, no, okay. They've done studies about that. More people would rather die than do public speaking.
Yeah, public speaking, tough.
Yeah.
Is that idolatry?
No. I don't think that, you know, I mean, you know, we have fears, and God gave them, you know, God has us with, you know, our own set of issues and things that that, you know, it gives us something to do. We got to work on something, you know. And, you know, because I don't know, I mean, I have, you know, given my background and everything, I'm constantly having to, you know, what comes easy for most people does not come easy for me. And it is always a constant struggle. It doesn't mean I don't believe in God. It doesn't mean, I mean, I have my moments where I can be fearless, but it can prevent a lot, you know, it can prevent a lot. You know, you see how it's conditioned. All you have to do is see how they condition, you know, apes or chimpanzees, and you see how they've conditioned. If you've ever seen some of those experiments, they're heartbreaking. Or if you've ever seen, you know, dogs and you know, what they've experienced, and then their fear. So there's something more than, well, you know, you just, you know, you just believe in Allah and boom, it magically, you just work through it, because you look at how they have to train these animals, and they have to be treated a little bit differently in order for them to move forward and not be afraid, you know, dogs that have been abused and things like that. Mm-hmm. So I wish it was that easy. I truly wish it was mind over matter, but it hasn't been that way for me.
Right. I would say, you know, I would say that it's definitely not mind over matter. It really is something that, you know, your soul has to grow, you know, and you attain certainty through worship. You know, God says that, you know, we attain certainty through worship. So we nourish our soul enough that, you know, we have that certainty from God. Like, you know, today we were talking about earlier, Jeff and I were talking about how Abraham broke the idols, and it was just something that is, something that you cannot do especially as youth. Like, this happened in his youth, and you can't do unless like you have that sort of an assurance from God that He's with you, and
Right.
all these examples we have in the Quran. I mean, obviously that doesn't come naturally in that sense. Obviously there's people that are conditioned in a way. For example, like they train themselves and they might not have fear of public speaking, but really that's not the really. I think that the real fear. I think when it comes to fear, the way I see it is like you're afraid to do something where you end up going against God's will. Like say someone has fear of public speaking, right? And they might get nervous. I wouldn't think that he has committed idol worship there, right? But let's say if somebody's afraid, but then they end up doing something to conform or something like that, which completely goes against what God says, then that's committing idol worship.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Fear with respect to God. Fear with respect to God.
Well, but one of the things that I've noticed about that process is that you can, let's say that happens and that person, chooses that fear at the moment rather than what he knows God would want. If there's a God consciousness within that person, it's going to bother them. And usually the next time they're presented, because God is merciful and He always presents you with the same issues until you get it right. And usually after that, it might not happen immediately after, but usually when the position, when it represents itself again, when it presents itself into your life in one form or another, and you are aware, you usually, will say, I did this and it made me feel bad and I didn't defend my faith or God or whatever. And then you usually do, because otherwise we end up beating ourselves up. And that to me is a tool of Satan. As long as you feel bad all the time, then you feel like you can never progress. Mm-hmm. And I found that, I experienced something the other day and I was really feeling bad. And suddenly there was this like other awareness or voice that said, yeah, you didn't do it this time, but I guarantee you next time you will because of how you're feeling now. And I thought about that and I thought, yeah, when you see the progression, it's like if we look at humans in the physical matter, babies have to learn to crawl before they walk, before they run. And we're the same in everything when it comes to emotionally, and we have to be well-rounded. We can't just have blinders on and say, well, this is what I'm going to do, and everything else you throw by the wayside. That's not how God wants us to live our life. It has to include everything. I mean, that's how I'm seeing it. That's how I'm beginning. And I see that's what Rashad, he understood that.
Yeah.
I mean, you guys might have already known that, but I'm new to the party, and this is what I'm understanding. SubhanAllah, I can't believe how well-rounded he is in his understanding, and how really advanced he was. I imagine that people were completely freaked out at some of the concepts. They had to be.
Mm-hmm. He said that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay, I guess I'm going to just stop the YouTube broadcast, and God willing can continue. So for those who joined us, thank you for joining us and for being a part of it. And God willing, our next study is going to be on Saturday at 9 a.m., God willing. And I believe Nudrat's going to be our teacher, right?
Yeah, you're in charge.
I'm not in charge. I think it's her turn. Okay. All right. God bless you guys. Salãmun Alaykum.